5 years ago when we ran our first class with a couple of people, to fast forward to now to have hundreds of people here in attendance, and I've kind of met so many over the years. This is a kind of a bit of a pinch me moment for a lot of the team here, and we're hugely proud of what we created, and we're delighted to welcome you all here today. So as Richard says, I'm going to talk about the physiology. What happens? Why is this exercise thing so important? Why is resistance training of all things really important for everyone, but especially as we get older? And the philosophy. So not just what we do and how we do it, but why we do it and why it works, and what are maybe the intangibles that make this place so special, or that word community that we heard about so far today. As Richard's alluded to, I studied in Trinity. I did my BSc in Trinity College. I earned the Foundation Scholarship, or SCOLS, which some of you may have heard of. I then completed the NSCA, the American S&C qualifications. I worked out in Santry for a year. I moved to Austin, Texas, of all places, for a year, and I worked over there in the Wellsport Clinic, which was, again, a sports medicine type of facility. Saw a lot of golfers over there. Completed my master's in Trinity in sports and exercise medicine. And then I kind of said, what next? And that's what led me to kind of set up this place, Rapid. The only problem was I wasn't sure what to do, how to do it, where to go. So it was actually my sister-in-law, of all people, who told me, have you seen this gym, Rocky Fitness? There's this guy, Rocky Fitness, and he's running classes up in Spawell. And it was COVID times. You couldn't have an indoor facility, but with the big dome in Spawell, it was technically outdoor training. So Rocky and Rob used to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and they used to cycle to Spawell, and they used to empty out all the kettlebells and the battle ropes and whatever else. And they'd have everyone in there, allocated spaces across the whole dome, and people could train. And then they'd put it all away again, and they'd take it all back out that night, and they'd work this sort of morning shift and this late shift every day. And then as those restrictions started to ease, Rocky, as he said, kind of said, well, maybe we've enough people to set up a gym. So that's where they found this spot. And if you look at that photo there on the left, I would say you probably wouldn't have left your dog in it overnight. So to have the vision from there to here is obviously incredible. And there's my front office, or our front office, Rapid's front office. A very proud Mike with his 2 adjustable dumbbells, a couple of golf sticks, and a bench, and a small little sign. So very much humble beginnings. And I think myself and Rocky both kind of struck gold that day, because I could have rented a room in any gym, and he could have rented a room to any physio. And it was only as time went on that we really realized how aligned we were. We were from similar areas. You know, we knew some of the same people. We were both happy to get up early and go to work and work for the day, and answer emails and calls and do all that other stuff that you have to put in, all that time when you're setting up a business at the start. That's really, really difficult. So, Rocky worked incredibly hard at Rocky Fitness, and I worked incredibly hard to get Rapid up and running. And we saw, especially from the Rapid side of things, was a recurring theme. Ourselves and all the team here were very much exercise-based physios. What that means is when somebody comes in with a sore leg, we test out their leg and we say, we think this leg could be stronger, it could be more mobile. You can come back to me every week and I can give it a massage, but I don't think that's the long-term fix here. I think the long-term fix here is you need some exercises, you need to go home and you need to follow this plan. Lo and behold, for most people sort of in their 50s and 60s, they weren't really following the plan. So what would happen is they get better the first 1 or 2 sessions, and then I'd say, great, your knees are doing well. What you need to do is you need to go down to the gym and you need to keep doing this. So they joined the gym and they'd walk in the door and they'd say, nope, not for me. It's too loud, it's too messy, no one welcomed me. They just didn't feel like the gym was for them. Or other people said, all right, I'm going to buy the equipment at home. And it was sort of stored over there, and it was dusty, and people were tripping over it. And the whole day to do it, so naturally enough, they never did it. So having heard this for a couple of weeks and a couple of months, I said, right, come on up, you can do it with us. So we kind of almost set this up at the start, whereas people almost did their rehab. And then the phone would ring and someone would say, oh, Mike, I heard you're doing that class. Can I come up? And I'd say, well, what's the injury? No, I'm not injured. Oh, no, it's only for injured people. So we got a few of those phone calls, and we started saying, well, what are we waiting for here? Why should we wait for people to have a sore hip or a knee or a shoulder? And why just get that one part better? Why not get the whole area better? Okay, so as a physio, and having done my master's in sports and exercise medicine, I really believed in how important exercise is for us as we age, and how it reverses a lot of the bad stuff associated with aging. And Rocky shared that vision. And another great story. So Rocky used to work in in the Leinster Cricket Club in Rathmines. And I know some of you here today are from that era. But there was one particular man who had a bit of a sore shoulder. And, Rocky kind of said, well, I think one of the best things for your shoulder could maybe be an overhead press. Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. No, Rocky, no, not a hope. No way. So he said, well, Mike, will you chat to that man? So I chatted to him and I kind of looked at his shoulder and I tested it out. And do you know what? I think a great exercise for you might be an overhead press. Brilliant idea. Brilliant. Fantastic. We'll do that. And, Rocky just, it's the way it goes. And, we've Dr. Ronan here today as well. And I think it can go that way. When the doctor tells you something, people listen. And when the physio tells you something, people listen. And sometimes if Rocky tells you, maybe some people didn't listen. So the same message can have more weight depending on who it's coming from. So that's how we set it up. It was out of necessity. This wasn't a business plan. We didn't look for a niche in the market. We didn't, go to a bank. We had a big empty gym and we had a big empty physio office, and we had a group of people who we thought, right, they're not following the plan. So let's give them no excuses and no barriers. And if we look back, okay, so it's 4.5 years. So it was June 2021. We had 9 members that first month. We had 2 classes a week. So I would say you're spoiled for choice now, anyone who's a member and can attend 40 or 50 odd classes. Of the 30 people who signed up that first year, 14 are still active. Okay, so I think that's an amazing stat in itself. That most people they do stick with it. We've had over 600 people have tried the class since inception. We currently have 43 classes over 6 days. We've 4 physios, that's about to become 5 soon. We've 6 strength and conditioning coaches, that's about to become 7 soon. So bit by bit, it's grown, and this isn't overnight. This is 4.5 years. If you think where y'all were 4.5 years ago, it's not a quick time, but it's when you really believe in something, and as Rocky and Richard said, when you have a drive for something, that's the way it can go when you look back. There we are in 2021, and we can see little by little as the years went on how a couple more people started to join. We might have to get a group photo today of everyone so we can beat this. Yeah, and I think it was Steve Jobs who used to talk about connecting the dots, and it's only when you look back you can really see how certain things have led you to where you are today. So I did my master's in sports and exercise medicine in Trinity. It was a COVID year, so what happened was nobody could do a thesis. You couldn't go and test a bunch of people and bring them back 6 weeks later and test them again because you'd no contact. So we all had to do basically a literature review. So I decided to do mine on something that was very topical at the time, which was detraining in athletes. So COVID hit and we had all these people who were used to sort of cycling hundreds of kilometers every week or running or lifting weights. And now suddenly they've no equipment, they've no gym access, they can't leave a 5K radius. But what's going to happen to their bodies? They're going to naturally detrain. And a lot of the science and the evidence behind detraining actually isn't really in athletes, because athletes don't train for 20 years and stop training to see what happens. A lot of the evidence behind detraining is actually in bed rest studies, where they used to get people, you've broken your leg, lie down there and relax for 6 weeks. And hey presto, they started to lose muscle and lose bone, and their heart started to shrink, and all these negative effects. And a lot of the other science is actually in space studies. So when they send somebody up to the moon, or if NASA is sending someone up to space. So what is detraining? It's the principle of reversibility. If something can be trained, if I can lift weights and my muscle gets bigger, if I stop training, my muscle's going to get smaller. If I run and my heart and my lungs start to adapt, if I stop running, my heart and my lungs are going to start to de-adapt. That's all detraining is. Lucky for us, the human body is incredibly plastic. Okay, that means it'll continue to adapt to the stresses we put on it, or it'll de-adapt to the stresses we don't put on it. So in layman's terms, if you walk, you will get better at walking. If you squat, you'll get better at squats. If you do bicep curls, you'll get better at bicep curls. It's actually really, really, really simple when you break it down like that. And we've known about this whole thing of detraining for a long, long, long time. So this is a study from 1949 when they looked at the effects of bed rest. And this was something that people used to do. You had a pneumonia, bed rest. You broke your leg, bed rest. Something else has happened, bed rest. And all these different areas of the body detrain. So our aerobic system detrains, our muscular system detrains, our anaerobic. We've less blood, our heart rate changes, our stroke volume, all these negative effects to being still. And these are all things we don't want. And as I said, it's in space studies as well. We learned a lot about what starts to happen to the human body when we stop doing things. So if you go up, a long flight is 180 days or more. So if you're going up to space with NASA for 180 days or more, you're going to spend 90 to 120 minutes a day exercising. They're going to break it down into aerobic exercise for 30 to 60 minutes a day and into resistance training for 60 minutes a day. And even with your 60 minutes a day of resistance training, you're going to lose 0.5 to 1.5% of your bone mass per month. That's with an hour of resistance training. So that's what I always say is, if you went up to the moon, you can take all the medication and you can eat all the dietary stuff you want, you're going to start to lose bone. So when it comes to loading our bone and loading our muscles, weight-bearing exercise really is the most important thing. And I think it's really important the way they kind of break this down. It's how my head works, is that we have these two different types of exercise. On one side, we have our aerobic exercise, and over this side, on our other side, we have our resistance training. This is something I tell everyone when they come into me day one. And for older adults, and I think it's a generational thing as well, that when we think exercise, we think of going for a run or a walk or a cycle or playing football or golf. And these things are brilliant for us, okay? They're really good for our heart, and they're brilliant for our lungs, and they're good for our head space, and they're good for keeping the weight off, and they do fantastic things for us. What they don't do, though, is they don't load our bone enough. They don't build our muscle mass. I'll get a lady in who's 72, who walks 15,000 steps a day, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, cooks her own dinners, never goes to the Chinese, and has osteoporosis, has a really low T-score, and looks like the wind might blow her over. Okay, so what that is, somebody who's really fit and really active, but not necessarily strong. So if we think about a marathon runner, they're the most aerobically fit people in the world. But you don't look at them and think, geez, they look really strong. And if we think about a power lifter over here, we think, wow, that power lifter looks like they'd lift up this stage or they'd lift up the car, but they probably couldn't run to the roundabout and back. Okay, so these two different body types, these two different exercise types. And there's no point being brilliant at English and useless at maths. Okay, so we don't need to decide one or the other. We need to train both. So if you're walking your 10,000 steps a day and you're doing a run, you're doing a cycle, well, you need to weight train. If you're doing loads and loads and loads of weights, but your step count is under 5,000, well, you need to do more of this aerobic stuff. When it comes to the resistance training, what does that do for us? That's going to help our muscle mass, how big our muscles are, our muscle strength, how strong our muscles are, our bone mineral density, how dense and how strong our bone is. Especially important as we get older. If I'm going to fall, I want to have a big, strong, dense bone that hopefully won't break as easily. And we won't get that stuff from walking and cycling and running alone. So we need to have in our heads these two different types of exercise, and we need to make sure we're ticking both these boxes. Okay, and that's new information for a lot of older adults. They've never heard this. Okay, as I say, no one's granny was lifting weights 50 years ago. Nowadays, we've loads of grannies in here lifting really heavy weights. So it's new information for a lot of people. And you might say to me, well, Mike, hang on, I'm 60 or 70 or 80, like surely I'm going to detrain, I'm not going to be as strong now than I was when I was 20. Well, you're absolutely right. And we're not saying that everyone who's 80 should be as strong as when they were 20, but we're saying that age is actually only one factor, okay? So strength changes over a lifetime is multifactorial. There's not just one factor. So how strong was I at my peak? If I was a power lifter in my 30s, I'd imagine I'll be better in my 60s than if I was maybe a swimmer or someone who never lifted any weights. Have I continued to train? Did I train till I was 31 and then did I stop, fall off a cliff, or did I keep going to the gym once a week between the ages of 30 and 60? Well, that'll affect things. Have I had any big illnesses? Have I had a cancer? Have I gone through chemotherapy? Have I had a hip replaced? Have I broken something? Have I had a long period of illness that I've had an accelerated detraining, or that I've lost a lot of strength, or a lot of muscle over a certain amount of years? Loads of people come into me all the time. And they've had a big event, or maybe multiple, or they've had a bad 5 years. And the problem is that they've lost a huge amount of muscle in those 5 years, or bone, and we need to try and get that back. It comes with life as well. So when people retire, when they stop working, the kids are growing up, there's not as much sports and activities, no one they know is in a gym. Well, there's a natural, they're more sedentary, they're not moving as much, they're not lifting things around the house as much. All that stuff will feed into this age-related detraining. But it's not just because of their age, it's because we're also maybe doing a little bit less. And if we look at this over a lifetime, we can see there's a huge range in strength. So I have a 3-year-old at home, and probably most 3-year-olds are in and around the same strength. There's not going to be huge variation. When you have a 15-year-old, you can have a big variation. But I can guarantee you we have 80-year-olds here who are stronger than some people in their 70s. And if we look at people in their 80s or their 90s, we're going to have this huge, massive variation. And these people who are up here who are stronger and fitter or healthier is normally because they're still training, okay? So this is the variation we see with age. So age is only one factor. And as we said, we get this disuse event. So like you'll see facts like you're going to lose 2% of your muscle mass per annum, okay? And that might be true over a lifetime, but rarely do we lose things linearly. You know, between the ages of 41 to 42 to 43 to 44, it doesn't all just drop at the same rate. So we get these big disuse events, what we talk about. So if I fracture a hip and now I can't really walk for 12 weeks, and then for the next 6 months, I'm a little bit hesitant and I'm kind of furniture crawling, and the kids are, you know, they put in a stair lift now, and now they're also doing the shopping for me, and now I'm walking less. Well, actually, I've had a year there where, you know, the hip break was only one part of it. I would say there's two parts of every injury. There's the initial damage, which was broken bone, and there's everything that happened since. I've completely changed the way I move, or changed the way I live, or these things we think we're doing to help that person actually might be pushing them further down that road of detraining. So we can have these big disuse events where we lose a decade worth of muscle in a short period of time. And then interestingly, so if somebody does nothing, if they just, you know, I've recovered, the hip's better now, and I'll sit down on the couch, what's going to happen is this red line. I'm going to continue to lose muscle, or lose bone, or lose aerobic fitness. My heart will shrink. It won't be as good at pumping blood around my body. If somebody gets back in this yellow line, it gets back to their aerobic training. They get back walking. I'm doing my 5Ks. I'm doing my 10,000 steps. I'm doing a park run. I'm cycling. Well, they get a bit better. You can see this yellow line. They're definitely better than when they had this use event. But they never get that muscle mass back. And we get this a lot when people who've had maybe a cardiac event. Somebody has joined the master's program. Maybe 2 years ago, they had a heart attack, or they had stents, or they had a bypass, and they're really active again. And they go, Mike, my legs have just never came back. Okay, so they're fit again, but they've never got that muscle mass back. And in your 60s, you will not get that muscle mass back by walking. It's by doing this resistance training. So here's our green line. So when we actually work on our leg strength with the machines or with some of the weights, and we can start really low. We can have somebody in, you know, a couple of months after a cardiac event and start with a 1 kilo dumbbell. But where can we go over 12 months? Okay, I would say we have a really low floor, but we have a really high ceiling. So having that progressive nature to our resistance training is how somebody actually gets their muscle mass back after this big disuse event. So when it's put simply like that, we all know which one of those lines we'd rather be. And this idea of use it or lose it. So, you know, again, with this is a very famous image. Some of you have probably seen it before. So when we look at this is the cross-sectional area. If I was to kind of cut a hole in the middle of my quad here, well, there's a 74-year-old sedentary man. And you say, well, that's probably expected. He's not going to look as good as the 40-year-old triathlete. Okay, so we can see how much muscle here the 40-year-old has, and how little fat. There's obviously the muscle doesn't quite look as good here, and the fat's much bigger. But here's a 74-year-old triathlete. So here's a 74-year-old who's still training, and he looks a lot closer, she looks a lot closer to the 40-year-old than he or she does to this 74-year-old. So it just shows you again that age is only one variable, that use it or lose it isn't just a catchy phrase. If this person keeps running and cycling and swimming and lifting weights for 74 years, they will look far closer to a fit 20, 30, 40-year-old than they will to an unfit 74-year-old. Okay, why is this resistance training thing so key? So we always call it our secret weapon against aging. Most people can walk or can cycle, and that, as I said, that's brilliant for so many things when it comes to your heart and your lungs. But there's a lot of boxes that doesn't quite tick. So that's where resistance training comes in. That's how we improve our muscle mass, our strength, and our power. As we said, for our bone, how dense and strong our bones are. Our fast twitch muscle fibers. If I was to have a slip, okay, it's my fast twitch muscle fibers. Not just my balance. Standing on one leg is one part of the equation. But if someone was to push me, how quick can I react and stop myself from falling forward? Again, the difference between me not doing that and me falling and breaking an arm or a hip, we talk about that disuse event leading to another 3 or 6 or 9 months of less activity and minding myself. Like, that's a huge knock-on effect. My balance, my coordination, to treat and manage chronic disease. Everything just becomes easier. And again, our members don't come into us and say, I looked great on holidays. Our members say, well, I played my first round of golf. I was on holidays and I was able to walk around with my friends. I was picking up the grandkids. Mike, I carried the shopping in one go. It used to take me 3 goes. So these are just normal everyday activities that people are noticing are so much easier because they're stronger. We've people getting fitter and not frailer in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I think if you're a member here at the Masters Program, you think this is normal because the hundreds of people around you are all getting fitter and not frailer. But if we went population-wide and we took every 70-year-old in Ireland and say, do you feel better now than you did 5 years ago? I think it'd be a very, very, very small percentage of people that go, yes, I feel much better now at 70 than I did 65. but it's an incredibly high percentage of members in this gym. And when you're surrounded by that, this is normal. It's normal for a 70-year-old to pick up a heavy weight, and it's normal for a 70-year-old to feel good and feel healthier and feel fitter. And even if we're going down at a very slow rate versus a very quick rate if you did nothing. So, this is a very unique thing to resistance training. This is why it's our secret weapon, that it's now normal amongst this group to actually feel better. And we can see the difference. We talk about this, the variance, the variance in how strong and healthy people are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s is huge. Some people are really healthy and fit, and some people aren't very much so. And we can look at sort of in the red line, if someone was very sedentary throughout their life, well, they're dropping from a low peak, and they're dropping much quicker towards, say, a theoretical level of disability, or a level of, I can't walk up and down the stairs, or I'm out of breath doing normal things. If someone's recreationally active, they go for their walks, they keep themselves fit, they're in that orange. But if someone's fit and active and strong, you can see how much better they're doing in the green. That brought us to this master's program. So how do we combine all of those little bits and all that information, all that knowledge, and how do we put it together into a program that everyone can follow and hopefully reap the rewards of? I think we actually don't quite have the video, but I think what this will show is, if anyone wants to come up and dance, they're more than welcome. The idea of community as well, it's one of the reasons why this thing works, because I could put all these exercises on a piece of paper and I can hand it to every one of you and say, right, go down to the local gym and do it. And a very, very, very small percentage of you are going to do that. And most of the people who come here, and they've been here for a long time, they don't say, what I love is the equipment and the weights. What they really say is, what I love is it's the buzz, and it's, the coaches are very friendly and welcoming, and geez, the other members are great fun, and sure, don't we go and get a coffee and we can have a bit of a laugh. So I always say, I'd hate for somebody to be doing this master's program and say, oh, Mike, I'm fitter, I'm stronger, I'm healthier, but I hate it. It's not nice. No one's nice to me. No one says hello to me. So it's really important to us that people actually really enjoy it. And lo and behold, if you enjoy it, you'll normally stick at it, and then you reap the rewards. So that sense of community is really, really important. So that's the master's program. I say it's regular people reaping the rewards of regular exercise. It's very easy as well if you've never been here, or maybe you hear us on the radio or see us in Ireland AM to go, they've got the top 1% of people, they've just got the freaks, they've got the really fit and strong and healthy people. This isn't normal people. This is normal people. We've a couple of incredible athletes in their older age group, but the vast majority of people here are just normal people doing normal exercises for a long period of time, and that's why they're reaping the rewards. This is a generational shift. As I said, no one's granny did this 50 years ago. None of you guys were in your 20s saying, Mom, Dad, I think you should really lift up something heavy, okay? And nowadays, that's what we are saying to our parents. And a lot of people are here because their kids are into the gym. Their kids are going to Rocky Fitness or are somewhere else, and they see us online, or they start thinking, I don't want Mum or Dad to sort of go downhill in the next 10 years. Maybe they should give it a go. And they sign them up for the intro. Mum or Dad say, no, this isn't for me. And then 2 years later, they're still here. So that's normally the way it goes. We've this idea of our health span versus our lifespan. So we all know bit by bit, again, from when you guys were in your 20s to now, the life expectancy in Ireland has gone up and up and up and up and up. But with it is this huge sort of, this difference in how long we're living and how long we're living healthy and functional. So when given the choice of having a longer lifespan, living more years, or having a longer health span, living more active and functional years, most of us would actually, what I want is the health span. I don't want 20 years of I can't get up and down the stairs, or I need to be minded, or whatever else it is. And the exercise and the resistance training and the use or lose it is what's going to keep us healthy in those years, as opposed to just living in those years. People getting fitter, not frailer. Again, if this didn't work, we wouldn't have a couple of hundred of you here in front of us talking about it today, okay? So it's working for normal, everyday people, and that's why it's growing. And, we're hugely grateful to our community here, because you guys are the ones telling your neighbors or your spouses or your sisters or your brothers or whoever it is, someone down the shops, oh, you should give this thing a go. And that's because it's working. We also have this idea of prevention versus treatment. And I think this is a huge new sort of novel idea in healthcare. It's like, what do I need to do now so I can actually keep playing golf in 10 years, Mike? What do I need to do now so I can still go for my run, or so I can still do the things I want to do? That people are trying to future-proof themselves. They're thinking 5, 10, 15 years into the future, and they're saying, right, this is, I say you don't brush your teeth today, so you have nice teeth today. You brush your teeth today, so you have nice teeth for the next 20 years or whatever it is. And lifting weights and exercising is no different. You're doing this stuff now so you can reap the rewards into the future. And again, a really common thing is somebody joins in their 70s and goes, oh, I wish I did this 10 years ago. Okay, so, it's the sooner the better. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today. And again, as I said, it's everyday tasks. It's people saying, Mike, I can run up and down the stairs again. I can carry more shopping. I haven't played golf or tennis in a long period of time, or I haven't gone for a run in a long time. I can get up and down the floor with the grandkids. Like, these are the rewards that people are reaping. It's not because there's a holiday or there's a wedding or there's something else coming up. It's for functional activities become easier and easier. So the structure, again, most of you know it, some of you mightn't. Like, again, people find it very hard to visualize what is a class. Like myself and Rocky and Richard and all the coaches here, we don't stand at the top and say, everyone do this and everyone do that and everyone do this. Okay, everyone almost has their own program. And especially when you join, when you're a new member, you have to meet the physio first. We're going to go through your history. We're going to find out what injuries you have, what ailments you have. We're going to find the right starting point for you. From that starting point, bit by bit, we're going to graduate you on and move you on. This foundations element lasts between 4 and 12 weeks. There's no rush to get off it. The right program for you is the right program for you. So we'd never bring someone in day one and stick them beside a load of people who are doing this for 5 years and say, sure, keep up with them. So whilst it's called a class, the reality is 10 people could be doing 10 different programs at the same time. And it's our jobs to find the right level for each person. That person who has just had a cardiac event or is that bit older, who has maybe done nothing for 20 years, needs to start at a much lower level than that person who's still doing the park run every weekend and still plays golf 3 times a week. They can start at maybe a slightly higher level. And yeah, when you graduate, then you move on to our main program. We mix that up every 2 months. And between those 2 months, we change the reps or the sets slightly between the exercises. We tend to have sort of 6 compound movements. We tend to have 1 balance exercise. We tend to have a jump or a hop or some sort of bone loading exercise and some sort of a core exercise. That's our recipe, and we mix and match that throughout the year. All the classes are supervised. We'll have one of the physios and one of the strength coaches at every class. So you're really well looked after. And in fairness, the vast majority of people will say that. They say, the coaches are great. They're always watching. They're correcting me. And that supervision, I think, for most people in this age group is what they need. They don't want to just, as they be released to the wild in a public gym where they're not really sure if they're doing things right. And again, who are our members? So we've people with hips replaced and knees replaced and load of cardiac events. We've disectomies, spinal fusions, rotator cuff repairs. We've all types of cancers and chemos and radios, Parkinson's, MS, polio, osteoporosis, osteopenia, people from 55 to 87. Okay, so if Ben Dunn saw that or FlyFit saw that, they'd be having a heart attack, okay? But that's what we're used to, is people coming in here with all these injuries, with all these ailments, with all this medical history. We say, right, what's the right starting point for this person? We can't have a one-size-fits-all approach for all that array of people, but where do we find the right starting point? Because it's our belief that exercise is medicine, okay? That these are actually the people who need exercise way more than the 18-year-old who's worried about the holidays coming up, okay? They don't need to lift weights nearly as much as these people do, but these people are way less likely. So we need to find the right starting point for them, get an environment and a community that they're happy exercising in, and progress them bit by bit as the months and the years go on. What are our exercises? Well, our first one is a deadlift, okay? Obviously, not everyone has to do every exercise, but for the vast majority of people, being able to pick something up from the floor is really important, okay? If I was to drop my phone, if I want to pick up the grandkids, if I'm moving something in the house, I need to pick something up. That's the philosophy. Well, what about the physiology? How do I load my bone? I've osteoporosis, Mike. I've a sore back. I've lost muscle in my leg. Well, maybe that'll help all of that. Maybe that'll load my bone and that'll improve my T-scores. And maybe that'll build some of the muscle mass in my lower body. Maybe that'll help with some of the hormonal changes that are needed to help build muscle mass. We can start you with an 8 kilo weight. We can build you up to a 200 kilo weight. So we've unlimited room for progression and regression, which is so important. And you can see this, that those of you in the class, we lay out all the kettlebells in a line. Everyone says, no way I'll ever be up there. 6 months later, they're way further than they thought they would have been. Well, the next one is a squat. Well, again, what's a pretty functional, normal, everyday task is standing up from the chair. You're all sitting down now. Hopefully you'll all be able to stand up. Like that's what a squat is. And if you can do it with a weight, if you can't, we've Rocky and Richard here. If you can do that with a weight, now you can do it holding something. Or now you can do it from a lower chair. Or now you can walk up and down a big flight of stairs. And why don't we start that with no weight? And why don't we, over the months, go on, add more and more and more weight, or change the height, or do more of them? So we've all these options to progress and to regress based on how you're feeling on a certain day. But again, a hugely functional task, one that's going to help build muscle mass, one that's going to help build bone mineral density, and one that everyone can do very simply. A push-up, again, very easy for us to coach. We can find the right level. We can move that level up and down. That's my upper body pushing strength, some of my chest and shoulder and arm muscles. And then we've got the ring row, or we've got the low row for some of our pulling exercises, for our back, for our bicep. As Richard said, as Rocky said, we've had some pretty good publicity so far. So we've been on Ireland AM twice. We've been on RT Radio. Just recently, the Carl Henry podcast was released. So public knowledge is starting to grow and grow and grow in this area. And I do think it's going to be something that continues to grow as the years go on. Why are we all not doing it? Okay, so you've heard the arguments for it. You've heard what it can do for you. You know, it does more for you than most medication will. It's probably better for lowering your blood pressure, and it's better for improving your bone, and it's better for making us feel good. It can reduce the rates of dementia and cardiovascular disease and diabetes and depression and all-cause mortality by 30%. It's good, you know, you rarely get a medication that's good for your bone, your muscle, your brain, your heart, your lungs, and your mood, but that's what exercise is, okay? And that's only a small list of the things exercise can do. So why are we all not doing it if it's this obvious? And it's actually another thing, the law of diminishing returns. It's the people who are least active, doing the least steps with the lowest levels of strength, who have the most to gain by starting. Okay, so going by 0 to 90 minutes of exercise in a week can reduce the risk of death by 14%. Okay, it's the people who can barely lift a light kettlebell who see the most improvement in 6 weeks here or 12 weeks here. Again, if I was to start playing the violin, you know, I couldn't get any worse than I am today. I could only improve over the next 3 months or 6 months. So that's what lifting weights is. People think, well, Mike, I'm too old. You know, I've lost too much strength. I should have done this 10 years ago. I say, nonsense. This is easy. Way easier for me to get that person stronger than for me to get somebody playing for Ireland in rugby stronger. They're at the top. Trying to get them 0.5% better is really difficult. Helping people who are maybe detrained or who've lost strength over the last 10 years is the easiest time to improve things. And the recommendations, the World Health Organization, the American College of Sports Medicine, the HSE, they all say we should be doing this twice a week. Okay, twice a week doing compound movements, 6 to 10 compound movements from a low percentage of our max. As we get more experience, a higher percentage of our max. That's exactly what we do here. What about the bone? So again, it's a huge reason, a huge driver for people joining the Masters program is osteoporosis, osteopenia. They've just had a DEXA scan. They can't believe the results. They start Googling, well, what's good for osteoporosis? Weight-bearing exercise, what's that? They Google it, oh, rapid Masters program, Rocky Fitness. I better go and talk to those guys. So some of the consensus statements, this is the British Journal of Sports Medicine. So over in the UK, strong, steady, and straight. How do we improve our bone? Well, we get strong, we lift heavy things. We get steady, we work on our balance so we won't fall and have a fracture, and we keep our back straight. We don't necessarily want to lift like that, we want to lift a bit more like that, which is exact stuff that we preach here in the program. These are results of our members, okay? And you know, one of the leaders, Belinda Beck and the Onario and the Bone Health Clinic in Australia are some of the world leaders when it comes to bone mineral density. I actually think if we had DEXA'd everyone in the room here 3 years ago and re-DEXA'd you today, you know, we'd be up there with some of the best results worldwide. Because these are our members. So we can see at the top here between 58 and 59, 13.7% improvement in spine bone mineral density. Here's someone else between 72 and 74, improving 11%. For a long, long, long time, worldwide, we thought this wasn't possible. We thought the best thing you could do was sort of flatten the curve and you could maybe maintain your bone. There's no way you could get stronger bone in your 70s. We would just hope that we didn't drop bone. We wanted to maintain. Well, here's someone getting 11% stronger in 2 years in their 70s. And they're not alone. So here's more results. We've dozens and dozens of these of members, 5% improvement, 4% improvement, 9% improvement. These are you guys, okay? So this is in this one facility that we said 5 years ago didn't exist, that we've people, you know, improving their bone by huge percentages in a short period of time by just doing basic things really, really well, consistently. We said it's never too late, okay? It's a very common thing. People think, well, they've missed the chance. They should have done it 10 years ago. Yes, the best time to start was yesterday, but the second best time, as we said, is today. And that's the same with any kind of skill, learning a new language, playing a new instrument, lifting weights. Most of your improvement is at the start, the first sort of 12 weeks, 26 weeks, 24 weeks are when you're going to see the highest rate of improvement. I see you've got about 2 years until you start hitting this period where it slows down. So for most of us, we're nowhere near that level where this isn't going to work by just doing the basics really, really well. The most important thing is that we find that right starting point. So what we don't need to do is bring you in day one, throw you into the class with Rocky and the coaches with the music pumping and doing sort of burpees and pull-ups and box jumps and all this sort of difficult stuff for you to hurt your knee or your shoulder and say, oh no, the gym's not for me, I'm going to stick to the walking. Okay, because that's what happens is people all around the country, they go to a class or go to a gym or try an exercise that's not quite for them. They see something online. I get people in, they have, I have 1 kilo weight, so I said I'll just do 200 of them a day. And they can't lift their arm the next day, okay? So it's finding the right starting point. Like you can't do too little at the start. We can always make things harder. You can never reverse time and make them easier. So if we start really small and really low and really easy, we can always progress to see how you're doing. And again, that idea of a low floor where we can have people in with medical conditions or with injuries that we need to start them really small, but over the next 6 to 12 months, well, we can bring them on a huge way with this facility like this. Weights that go up to 120 kilo on the pulleys, the kettlebells, the dumbbells, everything we have here is that we have a very high ceiling. Those initial adaptations, again, if we're into the physiology of it, it's our brain, it's our CNS system. Our muscle doesn't get bigger in the first 2 weeks. Our brain starts to learn, how do I switch on this muscle and how do I use it? Our brains remain very plastic as we age. This idea of regaining strength, so we've got satellite cells or what we might call muscle memory. If you're someone who was very fit and active, in your yesteryears and you maybe haven't done as much the last while, well, you regain it much quicker the second time than someone who's starting from absolute scratch. And then when it comes to that bone mineral density, those DEXA scans, we don't do those every 6 weeks. No one says, okay, your DEXA wasn't great here, we'll repeat it in 2 months' time. Okay, we repeat it in 2 years' time because bone takes a very long time. Okay, muscle and tendon, and mostly muscle, will adapt far quicker. Our brain will start to learn how to use these big motor units and use more of those muscle much quicker. But our bone will take a while to adapt. So that's why we need to have maybe more of a long-term approach when it comes to improving our osteoporosis. Again, some of the principles that underpin this neuroplasticity. Well, number one, it's not just a catchy phrase, it's a scientific principle, use it or lose it. Okay, if I don't use parts of my brain, they will start to degrade. They will get less good at their task. And lo and behold, if I use it, I'll improve it. So number two, so if I do lift weights or if I do balance work or if I do dance or if I do swing a tennis racket, I will get better and better and better at that thing. So how do we put it all together? Okay, so some of the key take-home points are some of the reasons what we do here in the Masters program. We find the right starting point, as we said. We can't have a one-size-fits-all approach for every person in this age group. 55 plus is just too broad a range to say, you need to do this one thing. We need to have a broad range of starting points. A relaxed pace, again, no one's shouting at you or screaming at you in the Masters program. The music's not pumping, you're not in a rush to do things, okay? So you go at your own pace, there's no rush. Progressions and regressions, as Richard said, how do we make things harder and more difficult if you're doing well and vice versa? If something's not going to plan, how do we regress you or pull you back so we can still do something? Do compound movements. So we don't do loads and loads of bicep curls. We do some of them. We spend more time doing pull downs and more time doing low rows and squats and deadlifts. Because when we do big compound movements, it's more functional. We're going to use more muscles and we're going to get a better response. Consistency beats intensity. It's something people get wrong all around the world. As physios, it keeps us busy, okay? Because people think the harder I work, the better. If I just go into that gym and I just hammer it, okay, that'll be brilliant for me. I'll just go as hard as I can for a few weeks and then I can drop off. Okay, and that person never makes progress. It's the members who've been here for 2 or 3 years who kind of half feel like all I do is have a chat, but they're actually like, how am I getting so much stronger? I'm never sweating, I'm never out of breath, but I just keep getting better at this stuff. And it's the consistency. It's showing up 2 or 3 times a week for months and years is what gets you stronger as opposed to working harder for a shorter period of time. And the idea, don't forget to smile, it used to be something we used to say before every class. So again, we have to enjoy it. If we don't like being here, we don't like the environment, we don't like the community, we're not going to stick at it, we're not going to benefit from it. So we have to really, really enjoy it and we have to stick at it. And nail the foundations. It's again, something that we've 2 new physios starting. We've Aisling, who some of you might have met last week, and we've Shane, who's going to come in next month. One of the things Aisling said was, it's amazing to see how well everyone moves. So you guys really squat well and deadlift well and do your push-ups well. And if you went into another gym class with people half your age, they don't necessarily move as well as you guys do. So, and the reason you guys do this so well is because we stick to the same things and we do them really, really well. Okay, we don't move on to something more complex unless we can do the level below it. And by nailing those foundations, we build our, if you're going to build a skyscraper, you're going to build those foundations first. And that's what we're doing here. So I love, like, these photos are 4 years old and nothing's changed, okay? Bar the gym looks way better. And the coaches probably look a little bit older. But, it's the same exercise, it's squats, it's deadlifts, and that'll never change. As I said, it's the magic sauce here isn't in the program. It's in the execution. It's how we coach it and how we find the right starting point for each person. Too many gyms overcomplicate things. We really simplify things, especially in this age group. So if we can do compound movements, be technically excellent, and be really consistent, that's the recipe for success. My final kind of take-home message and take-home point. So number one, if we were to pick out one member and do one maybe slight highlight, I know we'll hear a little bit more from Anne later on today, but like Anne Woodlock, and this is not from the Masters program, she's a world champion long before she ever joined the Masters program, but she epitomizes our slogan of use it or lose it. She's 2 gold medals for Ireland in the World's Masters Athletics Championships, 80 to 84. I think, maybe correct me, her 3,000 meter time was like 18 minutes, so 6 minutes a kilometer in her mid 80s. She's 2 silver medals for Ireland at the same championships. She comes in, she can lift weights, she can run, and she's a lifelong athlete. And she shows us what's possible as we get older if we look after ourselves and we do exercise. So, that's the possibilities. And, as I said, the Masters program has absolutely no part to play really in her being the incredible athlete she is, but I still think it's worth amplifying and really highlighting just what is possible when we look after ourselves. So 5 take-home messages for me. Resistance training is your secret weapon against aging. There's nothing else that can do for us what resistance training can do for us. We need to do it. It's never too late, okay? Don't think like you've missed the boat here, but don't wait, okay? Yesterday was the best time to start. Today is the second best time. When it comes to detraining and deconditioning, age is only one factor, okay? It's definitely a factor, but it's only one of them. So don't use that as the excuse that I can't exercise, I can't lift weights, I can't still get fitter and not frailer as the years go on. For bone and for muscle, they need resistance training. Okay, if I went to the moon, I would lose muscle, I would lose bone, no matter how much medication I took, no matter how much exercise I did. They need weight-bearing resistance training. Aerobic training, walking, running, cycling, and swimming alone will not help you maintain your muscle, maintain your bone in the next 10 years. And this idea of future-proofing ourselves, use it or lose it. We need to do this stuff now. We need to keep doing it. We need to be consistent with it. And we've remained fit and strong and healthy and active for the years to come. A couple of references. Okay. Thanks so much for listening.